Hello, everyone. I'm pleased to welcome you to this afternoon's Catapult Lockdown Virtual Salon. I'm Marsha Pearce, and joining me in conversation is Esther Chin, who lives and works in Jamaica. Now, before we get started, I would like to say a big thank you to the Catapult partners, including the American Friends of Jamaica, Kingston Creative, and Fresh Milk, for making this series of salons possible. Please feel free to ask your questions in the comment section during the talk, and we'll get to them in the Q&A segment. Esther, a warm welcome to you. I'm so pleased to be joining you in conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Dr. Pearce. Thank you for having me, and thanks to all the sponsors. I'd like to also say thanks to my mom, my grandma, and Mrs. Chin, Miss Chin, and for God for being here.
Now, that's a great start, a great way to start. Your practice includes a look at a virus, and I found that very fitting given this moment we are in. I'd like to talk about that. Of course, we're in the midst of a pandemic, but your work is a reminder that COVID-19 is not the only health threat people are facing. For example, in June this year, the World Health Organization announced the 11th outbreak of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of the Congo since the 1970s. You've been exploring Ebola in your own work, and you've been thinking about the virus through a range of materials, including aluminum, wax, foam, fabric, and clay. What can you tell me about this series of work, its motivations and what you've been learning about shape and materials?
Okay, thank you. At the time, I was doing my master's in Kentucky, and my mom was also sick. And over the news, you'd see like there was an outbreak in Africa, but there wasn't a lot of information. And when I saw the motif, I was drawn towards it because there's something about it that reminds me of what my mom was going through at the time. And then because of the person who I am, I try introverted and try to think about certain things, and I guess I wasn't comfortable with what's going on in my personal life. So then I used that to talk about the issues that she was going through. So I used that different materials, because I remember her talking about certain taste that should have, like a metallic taste. And then you also have, and with the Ebola also, a lot of person would bleed, have internal bleeding, which also correlates to what she was having. She had to have a lot of like blood transfusion. And she would tell me like when they're drawing blood or giving you blood, they pull it, and then there's like this shock or electricity that runs through your body and would make her grin, like, ugh. So and I think about like they're from a country where all this was happening, but there wasn't like a lot of persons or the news weren't really talking about what's happening in Africa. They'll usually only show certain type of imagery. And then I don't know, it's like, oh, like at this moment, like I'm reliving everything. I'm remembering what she tells me, how she felt, and so like I could relate to how the families of those persons and what they were going through. And so I tried to use certain material to kind of bring that out in my work and talk about something that was not just about me, but something more universal. Yeah.
What have you learned from the different materials? Because I mean, you've been, looking at this virus through different iterations. What has clay taught you? What has fabric taught you?
Like for the fabric, the inspiration is like from my grandma, because she loved to sew. Okay. And she's always encouraged me and said, come and get a sewing machine and come and, and she was like, come in, baby. And so it's like bring back memories too. Like it's a fusion of memories and just making for their memories to live on, because there's like different types of death. You have death when you're walking around but you're dead inside, like you're just, and that's when you go through like loss, like what we're going through or what I've gone through. Like you've this sense of absence, and then you have the body actually leaving, degrading, and the spirit leaving the body, transitioning. And then you have the death of memory, where when you have someone that you love, if you don't remember them, they die a third death, which is worse than anything else. So like you have to remember your ancestor, you have to remember persons, people that you love. Like I know some persons, like when they see certain artists and person putting up their imagery, I mean, it does feel a way like when you're not connected to that person who has passed, but for that person was their world, it's everything to them. So it's just like we have to be cognizant of each other and know that we don't want that third death, because it's inevitable. We must die because we're alive. It's just, but when you're going through it,
and so the materials become a tangible way of holding on, as a form of memory, as a way of remembering. Do you have any images to share with us that perhaps ties in with that, with this idea of looking at the Ebola and fabric and so on?
Yes, I do have the tapestry format, where I fuse into the material also certain recycled materials like plastic and other things. Like when one aspect, like when you have cancer, they always tell you make sure you eat healthy, with regardless of what any sort of immune disease, virus, even with the corona right now. You have to keep up your immune system, and you need to drink plenty of water. And yes, we are drinking water, but what are we drinking it from? So like I incorporate into that tapestry, like the plastic bottle, to show that kind of play on. It's being invisible, but it's slowly kind of degrading our body at the same time. So
Right. I think we have the image coming up here. Is this the work?
Yes. So you can see how it seems like you want to kind of invade the space, and it has that aspect of, that's how the virus, they have the body, and then they have the tendrils that comes off from it, and they by themselves they don't really do anything, but when they attach to your cell and then they duplicate. With the Ebola, it's the same thing. By itself, it doesn't cause any harm, but when it duplicates and it attacks your liver, and then that internal bleeding, and then you start, and even with all the different with cancer, with corona, with it's just.
I really appreciate the way that you're thinking materially, that you're bringing together a number of different materials to process, a very personal experience, but of course to have that experience and conversation really resonate on a more universal level, because there's so many people experiencing this around the world. And of course, as I mentioned at the start, we are in the middle of this coronavirus pandemic. Has the shape of this virus that we are battling now, has that made its way into your practice? Or have you been thinking about this virus and how you would incorporate that into your thoughts about memory, and the body and experiences of hurt and trauma and so on?
So at the moment, not necessarily the shape, the form of it, or the shape of it, because I'm still more drawn towards the shape of the Ebola. There's something about it more of an aesthetics or formal, way. However, like the terms of being isolated, it has taken a toll on us. Even being an introvert, there's something about you when you choose to stay in as opposed to when you're told to stay in. There's this defiance in persons, people. Like you could have the nicest house, you just like you're telling me to stay inside.
Yeah.
So it's So it's more about the isolated body. Right. I'm
So you've
looking
been
at
thinking about that. You're looking at that now.
Oh, right.
You started talking, a lot about, your mother's experiences, and of course, by extension, your own experience of seeing her like that. Could you talk about, the connection between art and healing? As I said, we're all facing this global health challenge, and the subject of healing is at the front of all of our minds, and not just healing for the physical body, but the mental, the emotional healing. Tell me a bit about how you are thinking through this connection between art and healing. Can art address healing? And in what ways for you?
So there's, for me, my work is very autobiographical and personal. So it's about, like with the tapestry, it took me a while because during the period she was sick, but then after she started to change, like her body and certain physical things, like your mother is a strong person. You have this idea like your mother, my mother is the strongest woman I know. Nothing can
All
happen to her.
mothers.
She's the one that she's defiant and strong, and she's my guardian. And like even as big as I was, she would always come and meet me at the bus stop. And like anybody would like, she's like, just give them the look, that look. Don't you dare! So it was very challenging to see her like become weak and to change, to transition from that strong, powerful woman to I use my art. There's something about tapestry. Like I didn't do tapestry before when I was here in Jamaica, but when I went overseas to UKY, I guess I fell in love with the process. It's very tedious and meticulous, but there's something about when you're going through that pain, packing and loading. It's like this thing you get. It's like a rhythmic rhythm, and it helps you to kind of deal with that kind of anxiety and that pain and the processing what's going on, how you are doing. You're crying, but then you can't make her see. But then when you see her, you start to cry, and then you have to be strong because then she wants to be strong for you. And then, so, like I use art to deal with that different transition. But overall, like we have art therapy, and like when you're going through it, even to splash some paint. You don't like some persons like, oh, I can't draw or I can't do anything. Like even when I had students who I said, can't you do a dot? No, miss, I can't even do a dot or a stick person. But you have to be reminded that art is in everything. You don't have to just draw paint. You can do a nice hairstyle. You can cook a really good food and garnish it with some really beautiful rosette made from tomato. It's just all the presentation. It's just how you garnish. It's how you move your bed, the feng shui of your room. There's green flowers. Art is in everything, and that's what we need to remember. Like art is not just one aspect. Like persons, oh, I can't draw, and that's it. Art is in every facet of our life. That's why we have design, clothing, how you carry yourself, how you put together everything. So just use whatever is it that you love to do. That's being creative. That's using your you just need your elements. And even if you don't know about elements, line, color, just anything that you like, that makes you feel good. Going to the ocean, just holding your breath, just when the water is like really rough, just going there and try to stand up and see if you don't want to live. Because when that water beats you down, you have to decide, do I want to get up back, or I'm going to be submerged by this thing. And just listen to the ocean, smell the ocean, smell that salt air. Just look at everywhere. Every country has beautiful sceneries that they can look at and really think about it. Just go on your back, look up at this cloud, just look at the cloud passing. That's art. There's elements of art. You have nimbus, different types of clouds. Sometimes you have the rainbow. Just look, just find something creative to do. Dance, sing. Even if you can't sing, just shout. You have yodeling. You have different types of ways for you to just get whatever it is you're going through out. And you just need to do it in a peaceful, non-dangerous way. But there's
no, I really appreciated. I like that you began by talking about the use of tapestry and the making process as a way to kind of work through your emotions, to work through your feeling, and then moving, to think about not just what we typically understand as art or art making, but seeing art making in our daily interactions, in our rituals. I want to talk a bit about the place of the natural environment in your work. You were just talking about, the clouds and the water and flowers and so on. I know that you have done a body of work with petals, and I would love for you to talk about that and to tell me about the significance, the place of the natural world in your practice.
So I get I like to use natural material or recycled material, but for the natural, it talks about the ephemerality of life, as I said. Like, that's the inevitable. Like, we're here for a brief time, even if it's 120 years, it's a brief time, and we need to make the most. Yes. For this piece especially, it was done on my grandma. Like, when my grandma passed, this was one of her sheets. And it's just like to remember her also. Like the layering of the petals, the staining of the petals, because each time, like sometimes based on how you move, you can actually see there's like an imagery in there. This was done for my BFA show at Edna, and you can, so over time, the use of the petal, you see like the petal starts to fade, show that you have the gradation from one shading to another.
Yes. I know because your work really comes from a personal place that
it's like, it's one thing that you as the audience see, but it's something else that I feel when I look at it. Like, I can't explain, it's just it's here, it's in my yes, it's.
And were those petals pinned onto the fabric? Can you walk me through the making of that one?
Okay,
are they individually encased?
For that so I did both. I did like a relief where I encased them into bubble wrap, but for that specific one, it was applied onto the surface. So it's like painting with petals. I use the petals as my paint, and then I also like use the petal and break it down to create pigment, like to grind it and to make it like a powder substance and mix it with water, so you get the pigmentation from it and the stains from it, where I used to go over and glaze it. It's bougainvillea petal that we have in Jamaica and in like Asian, like it's in I forget there's an Asian country where it's their national flower. So I try to incorporate that kind of duality into my work
Right. And
also.
thinking about, yeah, in terms of thinking about your own identity, of course, and bringing that into the work. I really like the use of the petals in those various ways. Of course, thinking about on a petal like the bougainvillea petal, you know, that can decay so quickly. And so we're thinking about the ephemeral nature of a material like that, something that is fleeting, and we could think about the body in that way. But I like that you also, ground the petals and used it to make a pigment and for a stain, and that allows me to think about, the body in a different state, and the body transitioning into another state in another way that is meaningful, and it has its place. And so that really opens up the work to a very, very powerful, resonating, meanings for us, and I know certainly for you. So I want to, I really thank you for making something like that available to us. Along with petals, what other sort of natural materials do you incorporate into your practice?
So like I use plants, different. So I use the plant, living plants, and then also using this. Like recently, well, 2018, I did an installation where I use like the driftwood to create wombs. So you have, we talk about the Trinity, so that has that kind of relationship, but it also talks about about the symbol for the female reproductive area, like the triangle.
Yes.
To kind of represent that, and this, and like stones, so certain types of stones, water, sand, so things from nature that we can find in our environment, and things that help to remind me of certain memories and certain things that I shared with my mom and my grandma. So.
Okay. So again, you're thinking about those natural materials as a way of triggering memory, as a way of holding on to memories. Are there any of the images there that we can share with our audience? Is the one with the room there? With the driftwood?
No, I didn't have the driftwood one. The one with the room has like the sand, but
okay.
For that one it has coral in there, but I don't.
Let's have a look at that one.
So you can see right around that square, it has water. There's water, that green looking. Oops, oh my. The green area is water, and then there's some purple water lilies in there, and then around it that's sand, and then in the middle is coral.
Right.
So you can see the coral right in the middle, and then you have sand, and the green blue areas is reminiscent of Caribbean or my area. So yes, and then you have some different types of plants.
Yes.
And it's in the back. It's infused within the installation.
Yeah. Along with your, the natural materials you mentioned, recycling and so on. And I wondered if you can talk about the influence of climate justice in your work. I mean, along with the threat of COVID-19, we still have the threat of climate change. And with climate change, in order to fight that, we need to think about issues of fairness and individual responsibility. So I wondered if you could talk to me about, the role of environmental consciousness in your art practice.
So, like, as we can see with the COVID, we're each other's keeper and protector and downfall at the same time. So anything that one person does, even if you live in Timbuktu, as they said, it will affect us. Like recently where we had the Sahara Desert in Jamaica and the whole Caribbean came across, it's all the way from over the other side of but yet still it affects us here. And even with the Amazon, the fire, it's like they call it the lungs of the world. And when it starts to burn, it causes havoc here in the Caribbean. So there's like, I guess we need to be more conscious of that. And then that's why like in my work, apart from how I grew up, like my grandma, we would like always out in the environment, planting and doing, being one with nature. So there's that ingrown thing within me based on my upbringing. But I guess some person don't have that. But then when you have to when you're doing your research and then really think about it, don't just take something just because somebody say it, but really think about it. Look at the corona, how it occurred all the way in Asia, but it's everywhere because of how we travel. And we just have to be cognizant that we have to think about those things. What happens to our children? Even if you decide you're not going to have any children, what happens to your friends' children? There's going to be human beings on this earth. You can't be selfish. Like, you have to really think about it. And what happens to us after we're gone? Like how we can make a difference while we're here so that it will make a difference for, and a lot of persons want to live very long. And if you want to live till you're 200, 1,000, then what happens to you when you are 1,000 years old? What you do when you're in your, even when you're 10, 20, what happens? Because if you think about like different religious aspect, if we're reincarnated, then it's basically whatever you're doing now, you're doing to yourself, because then you will be reborn into your own demise. So you just have to be cognizant of that and just know, like, as artists, like I try to use certain material that we use a lot of plastic, we just throw them away and we don't think about them. They affect the sea, different animals, birds. Like when you look at certain channels like wildlife, you see what happens to them. They get entangled, and even like the turtles where you get trapped. Like when you're using something, just remember to kind of even cut it up so it's smaller, but dispose of it properly, because then they can also swallow it and then that will kill them also. So it's like it will strangle them one way if it's whole, they get caught in there. But if it's too fine, like what happens when we throw it in the ocean and then it becomes very small, like sand, and even like the certain animal likes to eat, because it's just it floating. Like they think it's jellyfish if they see certain plastic bags floating and then try to eat it, and then that just.
And even that has entered the conversation now with mask wearing, and throwing away those masks, and they've been asking people to cut off the straps and so on, and dispose of them in a responsible way. So you've been thinking about all of that.
It's always right at the forefront, because you have to. We use a lot of things. We have to use certain things, but be mindful. You can find other ways to reuse them. Like even now they're making shoes from the plastic bag. So there's another way to use it. When you have a T-shirt, you can reuse it to make something else, a rug, or some kind of wall hanging. The plastic, like some persons are homeless, they can use the plastic bags to create rugs, are covering for them to keep them warm, or to use as installation. So there's different ways that we're artists, think of ways to use anything that we have more than once. So just be mindful of that.
Okay. There's an image that you brought to share with us And I'm going to ask our tech support to bring that up for us so we could talk about the piece. I was quite intrigued when I saw it. We haven't touched on this. Could you talk about this work?
So this piece is internal struggles. So based on what you're going through, death, illness, even to do an interview, you have that internal struggle. Right now with the online teaching, there's struggles for teachers, parents, students, everyone, the government. But for this specific piece, it's because of how I was feeling of losing my world, my mom and my grandma. And like person don't understand until you go through it. And then even if your siblings, you don't experience it the same way because there's certain external factors that cause you to not deal with a situation even when you're looking or going through the exact same thing. We're individuals, but for me it was very difficult, and like the pain, like your body breaking down, you feel very claustrophobic. It's like being squeezed, like the life being squeezed out of you, like somebody just come and you're happy and then they just pull the rug right under, and you're just falling. It is that's and but it's also like the forms, how I was thinking about how it also affects my mom because she's trying to be strong too. But then this invisible thing just attach itself to her. Almost like if you think about how you use leech as a medicinal thing, but it's something else, and it just sucked the life from you in a sense. And with cancer, with COVID, with Ebola, it caused that internal bleeding. It caused your body to change. It caused certain scale on your skin, like your skin's like it doesn't have that sheen. It start to be very callous. It start to lose because the virus attach itself to your cells and change what it's supposed to do, and kind of even trick the cells to do the opposite. And that's what causes a lot of bleeding and deformity, the abnormality with your cells. And it just
No, this is a powerful image of inner struggle, of the inner landscape, and I'm sure many of us can, really identify with something like this, especially since we're all going through this pandemic together. There are things that we can see on the surface, but I know many of us are struggling internally in all sorts of ways, dealing with various aspects of life as it is changing around us. So I really appreciated this image. I wondered if you could speak a bit about, there seems to be, in the way that you've been talking, there seems to be a spiritual undertone or perhaps a religious undertone in your work. And in fact, in one of the images, that installation that you brought up, even in the placement, of some of the materials and the objects in it, it felt very much like a ritual, very deliberate and conscious in terms of its placement. Could you speak about that?
Yes, thank you. So for when I lost my mom, there's certain, like during that period, well, even before, because my grandma is very religious and and my mom, so I would always go to a Catholic church. So we believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So it has those three, the Trinities, because along with the Trinity, based on the fact that oh.
Take your time.
So there's, So I would, Like my mom would always say, God bless and keep you. Like that would be her mantra to everyone. Like if she's talking to you on the phone, like that's one thing. Like you know, like when you talk to her and she's like, oh, God bless and keep you, and she'd and my grandma, the same thing. She'd get into spirit and she'd have that kind of real tendencies, and there's like love for God, for that being, that person, that entity, or you know, that presence. And so I have that, like I have the challenge. Like I love God still, but then it's like you will have questions like, why would God do this to you, or why would he like take away your entire family? Like, but then when you read the Bible, you think about the flood and turning persons to salt, and it's an interesting dialogue within yourself in that kind of spiritual sense. And so I choose to create like a shrine, a place of memory, a place that I can talk to God, to appreciate what, because like sometimes when something happens, you look at the glass as being half full, but what about the half? There's some water in there, so you had some quality time before, so you have to be appreciative of that.
Right.
Like there's always somebody worse or better than what you are going through. So what you're going through can be worse, it can be better, but you have to be thankful for your journey. There's only nobody can help you through that journey but you yourself. And having some kind, some person don't believe in a spiritual being, but whatever you believe in, I believe that we are created. Big Bang, God, Confucius, Buddha, we were created on this earth for a purpose. That purpose, we have to decide how to live, how to treat each other. There's certain things in life we will never understand. We can't, we just cannot understand it. It's just something you have to go through. Be grateful for what you're going through. Help somebody else who is going through something similar, so that they have somebody to talk to. That's more like when you're going through something, if you have somebody else who went through it, then that's intense internal struggle that you go through.
Yeah.
You will help to
Okay.
so
Thank you so much for sharing that. Of course, you know, as part of your biography, you know, in looking at yourself and having that work through in your practice, how does your mixed cultural identity figure into your work? Do you address that at all?
so it
Or is it
is
not a conscious thing?
okay. It is always there. It's like it's a fusion into who I am, trying to figure out who I am, where I'm from. So like my work is about my mom, my grandma, but it's also about my being a Jamaican, being of Asian ancestry, having African ancestry. So ends with the I think about what my grandma does, like what my great grandma does. With this setting especially, was there's a thing in Asia, when somebody passes, when your loved one passes, you would, so at the moment you can see me lighting a health note. So it's a note that it's like $10,000. So in case my mom, well, she has any unfinished business. She has a lot because she was very young. So she has unfinished business. So you help her to pay. It's like how when your mom would give you money to buy sweetie or biscuit or something nice. So you're doing something for your ancestor. Well, I'm doing something for my ancestor. My mom, my grandma, helping to, if they have any unfinished debt that they need to pay for. There's also where you can't see it here, but like they made paper house or paper cars. So like even with Egyptians, where they actually bury you with a lot of golds and silvers and things for you to have during that afterlife. So they're always thinking about their ancestors, what they need. You know, they need person to help them. They need animals to carry them. They need clothes. They need food. They need shelter. Yeah, you think about that. That person, when they were alive, they would think about those things for you, the living one. They always love you, care for you. So when they pass, you don't want them to go through that third death of being desolate, you know, not having anything to wear, not having anything to spend.
Yes.
But yeah, so it depends on the culture that you're from. I know some Christian, on the Christian side, they would say, well, that's something else. But on like the Asian Indian side, then you have the whole aspect of reincarnation. So you will actually be coming back. And then for the Christians, now it's like, oh, you are in the grave, you're not moving, you're not going anywhere. But we still have that memory in where we don't have it anymore, because that's one thing we need to as younger persons need to remember our ancestors and go to the grave. When you pass them at the graveside, it's like lots of grass or green things just growing all over. And so we have to remember, like, as a part of the Christian aspect, it's supposed to go there in November, I think in 3rd of November, where you go and you clean up the area. Right. But we don't do it anymore. We don't remember. We just, but we just have to remember how they treat us when they were here and all that love, and that we need to do that for them, even although they're not here. It's just keeping the memory alive. Don't let them go through that third death, basically. Don't, even with it just, October is coming up. I know a lot of persons think about Halloween, but that's not the important part of Halloween. The part is where you go to the grave, you light candles, you carry food, you reminiscence, you think about that person, and
you honor and you remember.
You honor.
Yeah.
So,
thank you. Those aspects, those elements really seem to be, key features, critical features of your practice. Esther, thank you so much for trusting me, with your memories and your experiences. I would like to open up the segment now to some Q&A and invite our audience. Can we get a question from the comment section? Thank you. We have author girl 44. And she asks, although it deals with visceral and painful subjects and processes, the work itself is very intricate and beautiful. Can you talk about that paradox in your practice?
Yes, thank you for the question. Like, it's about you have to remember, like, death is inevitable. It's dark. It's like you would use dark colors, blacks, and like that to create it. But if you love someone, like my mom and my grandma is my world, and I feel the pain every day. And yes, I could use like slashes and cuts and dark to create that intense pain. But she loved golds. She loved reds. She loved, like my grandma, she loves yellow, and so I use those colors, and so to represent the happier time, as I said. Like, you can't just look at it like just being painful, like it's painful, but you had this beautiful relationship with this person. So you have to make sure that it represents both sides.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, that you represent the complexity of that.
yeah, it is quite complex.
Yes, yeah. We have another question. Thank you, Author Girl 44. Question from Rachel. Do you find your work has a more significant impact among your peers, people around your age, or would you say you have an older, more conscious following?
Oh, thank you for the question, but I am not sure. I think because I use a lot of ephemeral material like the petals and the plastics, I don't think I have a following, because it's quite hard to get my work into certain homes or shows or so. But I would love to get it into different homes or shows. So yeah.
We have a question from Bim Vibes. Your work seems to have strong relations to spirituality and rituals or ceremony. What do you think inspired this? Thank you, Bim Vibes. And I know Esther.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, it's my grandma and my mom.
Yes,
I was
yes.
born, like as she said, born this way. Like it's ingrained into me. Being good, like from your little bit, your mama dragging you behind her to church, and even now with the loss, and like you're contemplating what is true, what isn't, and you have that dialogue with God or whoever you believe him to be. Yes, I still have that hope, and that you can't just be pessimistic about life, because you just have to be optimistic and hope for the best. There's days when you're down and you're struggling and you're being strangled, like you have like all those different things, COVID, schools, not having any money, sleeping in the car, have to be outside, you have to be around persons, you're not sure if they have, losing everything, everyone, being divorced, losing your child, losing, so, but then try to find hope, try to find something within that struggle, that light, that dissipate that darkness, even for just 1 second. Because when you just lose somebody, it's a lot of darkness. It's a lot of darkness. But you have to hold on. So.
Question from Art and Soul Art Gallery Bookstore. Your words and voice are so powerful and authentic. Have you considered adding this as a sound element to the work? Thank you.
Well, for for the piece that was shown, Manifesto of a Grieving Child, if you go onto my YouTube page, Esther Chin Art, you'll see that I did a poem for my mom, and I also did dresses to represent the different stages that she went through. So from, like, there was the one that I was wearing was a blue, like made from the plastic that the doctors have, because she would have, and there was one that I made like from the bubble wrap using the caps that she would drink. Like I tried to collect them when I came home and infuse them into my work also, to represent that invisibility, things that you consume, basically consuming you. Like you drink, you're supposed to drink water, but then the plastic is leaching into your system. Yeah. And then it causes, it's contradictory, like, but, and so yes, I have thought about it, I've done it, but I'm also very shy. So
yeah.
Yes. So, but, yes.
We have time for maybe a couple more questions. Author Girl 44, your familial connections and honoring of memory and legacy is truly touching. In addition to relatives you are close to, have you explored further back into your ancestry and your practice?
Thank you for the questions. Have I explored further back into my ancestry?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have tried, and I was fortunate enough to go back to, not go back, visit. I said go back. I am Jamaican, but to visit my father's land, which would be China, and that was a good experience. And then also that's where I also fell in love back with, along with tapestry, where you could see where how tapestry was made and the different spirituality. You see, we went to the different temples and experienced that side. So that was influential in my work. And I continue to research and to try to figure out where I belong in this space. It's a long journey, but yeah, because we were brought, well, half of me was brought here as a slave, and then the other was as indentured labor. So it's an internal fight within myself, because you have that kind of you have that struggle where you were bounded, and then you have that struggle where you're bounded, although you were a bit freer, but you still have those two struggles within yourself. So it continued to be a learning curve and a struggle. So.
Perhaps one more question. Yeah. From Annalie, how did your experience in graduate school in Kentucky impact the development of your art practice? Thank you, Annalie.
Thank you. Graduate school was due to my mom being sick. That was very difficult, being in a different space. And it was like the first year I was there, it snowed 12 inches, and I'm from a tropical country called Jamaica.
Yes.
So, and I literally was, it was a struggle. Like when the snow, like you step it in snow, and then when the cold hits you and it goes through your nose, and your nose feel like you want to fall off. But I had wonderful lecturers, professor. Like I did sculpture, my sculpture teacher, Professor Bibbs, was great. My fiber teacher, Arturo, he would always take care of all the students and teachers. Like every time it's your birthday, you get a pistachio cake or a chocolate cake or something. But he was also a great artist and like a great confidence. So like the teachers, they were really great, wonderful. And my Professor Scroggins, it taught me ceramics. I did ceramics too. And then I have a photography teacher, Professor Ruth. And so I had different teachers who were, they like, I guess probably they didn't understand me sometimes because I was struggling with my mom being sick and then losing her. But they did try to make me comfort. And not forget my classmates and my schoolmates. And they, Tillan and Todd and Madison, and they tried to be little beams of light. Caleb always giving jokes, so they tried to cheer me up and help me through. It was a tough time, but I had wonderful persons around me. So yeah, it was. That's the thing, when you have lost, it's good to have, even if you don't have blood, like blood relative, even if everybody, but it's good when you have persons around you who can help you to get through. Just some person to cry on, to curse out sometimes too, but just to get that out so that you don't internalize it, and then that will affect you, because it will make your blood pressure rise. it will cause you yourself will become sick. And so it's good to have people around you.
Esther, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I want to thank our audience for their insightful questions. Esther, I want to thank you for this opportunity to have such an intimate exchange with you. I really appreciated our conversation that really at its heart explores, the different kinds of death, and most importantly, asking us to think about memory, particularly in a space like the Caribbean where, we struggle with amnesia, where there has been so much loss, so much has been forgotten. And we are doing the work, or trying to do the work of remembering, and our artists are a key part of that work, that remembering, that putting together again. And so I thank you so much for that. Thank you very much to our audience for joining us. In closing today's Salon, I'd like to express huge thanks once again to the Catapult partners, including the American Friends of Jamaica, Kingston Creative, and Fresh Milk for making this series of salons happen. I invite you to please subscribe to the Fresh Milk YouTube channel to view all of the salons which have been recorded. And of course, please remember to join us for the next Catapult Lockdown Virtual Salon at 1 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time on Friday, October 16th, 2020. With Lucette Verboom from Curacao, who will be in dialogue with Dominique Hunter of Guyana and Brandon Kirk-Best of Barbados. Thank you, everyone. It's been lovely. Bye-bye.